Hello. I have had 2 semesters at university and I'm into my 3rd. One of my English classes is focusing on Black American authors and the novels they wrote. I have not read very many African American writers. I don't even think I could mention half a dozen. And I've certainly never heard of this novel. Richard Wright, Black Boy. I don't even think this is considered a novel. I believe it is a memoir of Richard Wright's tempestuous life growing up in the South. I believe he started in Mississippi and then he moved to Arkansas, and then to Tennessee before he eventually found his way up to Chicago. And this novel starts off with a bang. Like on page 1, the little boy, the little Richard, okay, Grant, don't say little Richard. This child, he's looking at the fire and he's thinking about how he can have fun with the fire. And so he gets the broom and he's breaking off some of the bristles from the broom and, you know, those straw bristles, and he's feeding them into the fire. And his brother says, "Hey, what are you doing? Stop that. There's going to be no broom left if you keep doing that." And then suddenly he thinks, I wonder what would happen if I took some of those burning straws and I held them up to the curtains, page 1, which burns half the house down when the curtains catch fire. And Richard, knowing he's going to get the whipping of a lifetime, runs underneath the building and grabs on to the chimney, the bricks that make up the chimney, because he knows that when his mother and father catch him for burning the house down, they're going to skin him alive. So Black Boy, a record of childhood and youth by Richard Wright. I made for the kitchen. Smoke was surging there too. Soon my mother would smell that smoke and see the fire coming and beat me. I'd done something wrong, something which I could not hide or deny. Yes, I would run away and never come back. I ran out of the kitchen and into the backyard. Where could I go? Yes, under the house. Nobody would find me there. I crawled under the house and crept into a dark hollow of a brick chimney and balled myself into a tight knot. My mother must not find me and whip me for what I had done. Anyway, it was all an accident. I had not really intended to set the house on fire. I just wanted to see how the curtains would look when they burned. And neither did it occur to me that I was hiding under a burning house. Presently, footsteps pounded on the floor above me. Then I heard screams. And then they find him under the house. And you think they're going to be so grateful that that little boy's still alive. They're not going to whip him. And he's clutching on to the chimney piece below the house. I could not withstand the tugging at my leg, and my fingers relaxed. It was over. I would be beaten. I did not care anymore. I knew what was coming. He dragged me into the backyard, and the instant his hand left me, I jumped to my feet and broke into a wild run, trying to elude the people who surrounded me, head for the street. I was caught before I'd gone 10 paces. "You almost scared us to death," my mother muttered as she stripped the leaves from a tree limb to prepare it for my back. I was lashed so hard and long that I lost consciousness. I was beaten out of my senses, and later I found myself in bed, screaming, determined to run away, tussling with my mother and father who were trying to keep me still. I was lost in a fog of fear. A doctor was called, I was afterwards told, and he ordered that I be kept to bed, and that I be kept quiet, and that my very life depended on it. My body seemed on fire, and I could not sleep. So young Richard Wright was a curious child. And he had a hell of a bad childhood. Not long after this incident, I think before we even get to page 30, the father abandons the family. We don't know why. And the mother is left with Richard and his brother. He's constantly hungry, if not starving. There's quite a lot about how he tries to assuage the terrible hunger, how he tries to fill himself up with water, and how that works for a short time. There's quite an early bit, I think it's when he's only 6 years old, where he realizes that if he hangs around the front of the local saloon, I suppose it's called, some of the adults going in, or more likely the drunken adults coming out, might throw him a couple of pennies. And one day, one of these drunken adults decides to take in this little boy and give him some alcohol, because that's going to be funny. He doesn't want to drink it. They make him drink it. He's overcome with a sense of happiness, pleasure, well-being, and they give him some more alcohol. And they say, all right, and they whisper in his ear, say, you go over there and say this to that woman over there. They whisper some, dirty words, and he goes over there because he's a drunk 6-year-old. And he says that as a 6-year-old, he was something of an alcoholic because it became a bit of a fun thing for these adults. He would still hang around the doorway. They would bring him in, they'd give him, and they'd teach him to say all these curse words, and he'd be running around the pub, swearing and saying all this stuff that he didn't even understand. They gave him more drinks and some pennies to put in his pocket. They leave. They go to another town. I think they go from Mississippi, they go to Tennessee, at which point these Tennessee boys, they don't like these newcomers. His mother gives him some money. Says, take this money to the shop, go buy the groceries. She gives him a list. He goes outside. The local boys surround him. They beat him up. They take his money. He goes back home crying. He said, Mama, they beat me up. She gives him some more money. Richard, go to the shop. We need that food. Mama, they're going to beat me up. Goes outside. Local boys beat him up again. Take the money again. Goes home. The third time, she gives him the money one more time, and she gives him a stick. And she closes the door, and she says, if you don't come back with the groceries this time, this door is staying closed. And he's bawling. He's fearful. He's like, Mama, they beat me up 2 times. Don't make me go back there. And she tells him, Richard, you got to learn to fight, or they're always going to take your money away from you. And he goes out there. The boys surround him again, and he goes berserk with the stick, and he smashes their heads. He gets the groceries. Young Richard learns to stand up for himself and to fight. Now, what happens next is that his mother, I'm talking quite a lot about the plot, but I'm honestly not giving you any more than the first 60 pages. His mother decides that she can't afford to keep these 2 children at home anymore, and so she takes them to the local orphanage, Richard and his brother, and they are now living at the orphanage, although they are not orphans. Both their mother and father are still alive. So let's move ahead. Later, when he grows up and he becomes a teenager, he starts to work because he's just desperate for money, for food. He begins to learn about racism, and he begins to learn about how white people seem to hate black people. And that is the message of this novel. The constant question in the novel, Richard, the main character, is asking, why do white people hate black people? It is an excellent question. When it is posed so plainly, why do they hate us? It's impossible to answer. You can't say, well, because our skin is a different color. I mean, we are human beings with slightly different color skin. But essentially, that's all it is, really. A slight difference of appearance. Institutionalized segregation and racism resulted in the fact that some people look a little bit different from other people. And there's more of those other people, and they make the laws, and they are the people in power. And so those people that look a bit different are going to suffer tremendously. And through most of the novel, the main character is wondering, why do they hate us? What can we do about it? How can I live in this society? And like a lot of writing that is set in the South, there's this constant hope to travel north, where it is rumored that racism is not as severe as it is in the South, where black people might be killed indiscriminately by gangs of angry white people who are angered for vague or mistaken reasons. It's a great book, and it is a very easy book to read. It is almost like you're reading somebody's diary. It is a memoir. It's written in a very flowing and like perfect style, quite plainly written prose. I think the novel is somewhere close to 300 pages, and I read it in a couple of days. Like I was shocked at how easy it was to read. However, the scenes and the things that take place in the novel are harrowing. I just think it is a great book to read about, well, the story of this little boy and the hardships he grew up in. So I would strongly encourage you to read this novel. If you're one of my British or Australian viewers and you would like to know more about the racism in the South in America from a first-person perspective, this is a wonderful, wonderful book to read. I recommend it most highly, and it's so easy to read. It is just no frills, no fancy writing. This is just this is what happened. This is the way it was. I went to a job interview. They said, "Can you read?" And I left out about 7 of those words that you probably can imagine. You know, the hard thing for this character is that he's intelligent and he wants to read, but he can't act subservient. He sees the black people around him and how they adopt this jovial, slave-like attitude when white people are around, and he sees that that's the way to do it. That's the only way to survive in the South, is to act in that, like a minstrel, to keep these people calm so that they don't kill us. But he can't do it. It's not the fact that he has too much integrity. He just can't adopt this slave-like attitude in the face of these people. He sees them as equals, and he can't just start scraping and groveling in front of them to appease their sense of superiority. It's really certain points in the novel, you like, there is a very threatening atmosphere of the fact that he can't pretend to be the way they expect him to be is jeopardizing his life, his safety, very severely. Not easy to read. It's exciting in the bad way. Oh wait, there was something I wanted to talk about. There was one thing I wanted to mention. What was it? Oh yeah. Okay, I just want to talk about one scene. So Richard, he's a boy and he loves to read. He gets this reading passion. At one point, he realizes that he could sell these newspapers. He could go around the community asking for a newspaper. And he doesn't care about reading the newspapers, but at the weekend they get this supplement that has this like literary supplement where they talk about pirates and, you know, adventure stories. And so he's selling these newspapers so he can get access to the literary supplement at the weekend. One of the people in the community asked him, said, do you know what's in these newspapers you're selling? He said, no, I don't care about the newspapers. I just want the literary supplement. He says, do you know that you're selling newspapers from the Klan? And he says, no. And the old man shows him the newspaper, and he shows him some of these caricatures, those drawings representing black people in that stereotypical way. That's how they're showing our people. And that's the newspaper you're selling. You're selling a newspaper from the Klan to black people. Nobody wanted to say anything because they're all terrified of the Klan. Maybe you should not be selling this newspaper. It's so depressing, but so well written. He's just a little boy and he wants that weekend literary supplement to read about fantasy and adventure. Heartbreakingly ironic. Thank you very much for watching today. I am so happy today to make a video of a book that I've read at university that I think is amazing. I think this is finally, here is a book I can recommend to you and say, I got something out of studying English literature at university. I hope my professors aren't watching this. Oh, the poetry professor, he was okay. And English theater, medieval to modern, quite good. I'll leave it there. Thank you for watching. This is Grant. Loves books. I love books because I love being given that doorway to things that I have no hope of comprehending on my own. But this helps me to understand a little bit, yes, a little bit, but a little bit is quite a lot more than nothing. Take care. Thank you for watching. I'm happy to make this video today. And yeah, look at that. Look at that. April 22nd, 1983.